Welcome to the Small Giants Fishbowl. This topic is screening for values. At Chief Outsiders, Tom and Art believe that culture is their primary competitive advantage. It is what allows them to attract and retain the best talent who create the most value for their clients. Their approach to hiring for culture is rooted in their core values. Join Tom McCrary, Managing Partner, and Art Saxby, CEO and Founder, for a conversation about their process for vetting values in the hiring process. Okay, here we go.
Probably all of you. I've got a whole lot easier because I have a very homogeneous workforce. They're very, very, very homogeneous. Now, we've got people who are born in the U.S. and born north of the U.S. and south of the U.S. and east of the U.S. and west of the U.S. and people that came up through B2B and B2C and different religions and married and single, but we are all very homogeneous in the vision for what we want to achieve and the values that we have. And it's because of that focus on what we're trying to do as a company and the similar values that allows us to really work together, and to bond. But I also recognize that some of you probably have very different situations where you've got highly paid executives. You've got people that are working for, particularly in the shop floor, minimum wage. You'll have a lot of more variability than I deal with. So I've got it a whole lot easier than you've got it. The other thing, and I know we hear this all the time, but I had to do this. I had to focus on building a culture because it was the only option I had. We said from the start, our only long-term competitive advantage is our culture. Now, that's a little weird coming from a company that focuses on marketing. We help companies implement, grow based on marketing strategy. And we're always talking about competitive advantages and differentiation and that. Our only competitive advantage is a culture that brings people in, because there's really, as a professional service firm, anyone could duplicate what we do. We don't believe there's a specific way, a Chief Outsiders way of growing a company. Your companies are all so really different, so very different. Your situations are different, that there's no one template to put in. So what we said is our culture has to be so strong that we attract the world's greatest marketers, because we help them do the best work of their careers, making big things happen, surrounded by people that they love to learn from. And there's actually a lot in there. There's why do they want to be here, and what value do we give them? So I'd say when we think about culture, my belief is that you've got values. And values are something that the management team can put together on paper and can say, all right, here are the values, here's what we believe in. I think it makes a lot of sense to get a lot of input into that, but those are things you believe. Values, to me, drive culture. Culture is more the expectation of behavior. Culture is how the people in the organization act and interact. Culture isn't something that management writes down and declares or posts on a wall. Culture is something that happens. Now, it can happen in a directed fashion. You can really lead and guide and build and sustain a culture, or it's something that can just happen and, that's the way it is, and you can be stuck. What we've said is, because of what we do, culture has to be important. We had to build the culture first, and then the company would follow. Now, to give you some reasons for that is, the company we have, a management consulting company, everyone in the company has to be in a vice president of marketing at one or more operating companies. Top seasoned C-level executives. We have 50 chief marketing officers. People, their last job was vice president, general manager at Microsoft, vice president of marketing at AT&T or WebMD or AMD. These are really strong, opinionated people who are really passionate. There is no way I could pay them to do what I need them to do. Quite frankly, I cannot outbid Microsoft for executive talent. I cannot outbid AT&T for executive talent, or for perks, or for power and authority. I couldn't tell them what to do, and I couldn't tell them how to do it. But we could develop a culture that would allow them to do what they love. Allow them to do what they spent their whole career training to do, what they're passionate about, and then help them do it. So it really started out with understand what would attract them, what would motivate them, what did they care about, and provide an environment that was so powerful, they'd say, you know what? Okay, forget that last job. We have 50 chief marketing officers who work full-time for us. They work 100% commission, no expenses. There's no base salary. I actually we tell them during the interview process, they're all mainly late 40s, mostly 50s, 60s. I say, look, this is hard to get going. Your income's going to be lumpy because you're paid on a revenue share when you're on a project, not when you're not, because it's going to go up and down. If you're really good and you really push at this, you'll make half what you used to make and you'll love your life. And we are growing like crazy. We're up 50% this year in revenue. We have 50 chief marketing officers. We've been doing this 7 years now. They have to love it here so much. They're saying, it's okay that I don't make the kind of money I used to make because I'm going to love my life. Oh, and to throw a little kicker, when they get through the interview process, which we'll talk about, when we extend them an offer, they have to send us a check for $5,000 to get in. We do a lot of training and developing to get them up, get them going, and we expect them to pay for that. So I tell them, look, we're not trying to capitalize the company on $5,000 one-time fee. I'd rather have your heart and your focus and your passion than your money, but I want some skin in the game, and I want you to really say, yes, this is what I care about. So top C-level executives, pay them half what they used to make, pay them only on commission, and they have to actually pay money to get in. It's got to be, we've got to focus on the culture. And I spend a lot of my time. My number one thing is focusing on the culture. I don't even do biz dev anymore. I don't do the accounting anymore. We've grown to the point where I don't do that. I'm focused on it. So it starts out for me on understanding what motivates them. I'm gonna jump to a screen, share a screen here. Our culture is based on the shared values. Okay, can you guys see the screen? No, it's okay. Those values really lead to the company culture. What we had to do was first understand what motivates people. Now, there's a book by Daniel Pink called Drive, and there's a video you can watch called Surprising Motivation. It's about a 10-minute video. It's Daniel Pink voicing over a quick draw where they do the really cool drawing things. What his assertion was to really motivate people, any people. They base this on research of lots and lots of people. To motivate people, you need to pay them enough to get the idea of money off the table. You can't pay them so little that they can't live on, but just pay them enough where the subject of money is off the table. Then paying them more doesn't motivate them. How you pay them doesn't motivate them. What motivates them are three things, according to Daniel. We added a fourth. According to Daniel, it's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Now, we added connectedness. Autonomy is being able to do what you are good at, being able to take your strengths and really do that and do it in the way that you think should be done. Mastery is being able to get better and better and better at the things that you value, at the things that you care about. And purpose is doing something that really matters. Now, we add in connectedness because I said we've got 50 people. They're all working out of their homes all across the country. Most of them only see each other face to face, well, once a year when we bring everyone into Houston for a week, and then we'll have regional meetings once a year in each of the regions, so those region people meet. And then we have online staff meetings like this, but we need to help them feel connected. So if you think of the autonomy, it's do what they love to do. Mastery, remember in our vision statement, we talked about learning from each other. These people love to learn. And then purpose is making big things happen. They love doing the best work of their career to really make big things happen. So I'd highly suggest you take a look at this Surprising Motivation by Daniel Pink. It's that video. When we go through our interview process, and it's a lengthy interview process because it's got to be a good fit for both sides. At one point, we send them an email, a homework assignment, and we say, watch this video by Daniel Pink. Here's the link. Read our core values, and then send us a written assignment back saying, how do you fit with the core values? How have you lived these values in your life? And believe it or not, this is after 4 interviews. So they've gone through 4 sets of interviews with a managing partner for the region, with a couple of other chief marketing officers. Before they get to the 2 principals, my chief marketing officer and I, they do this homework assignment. And we have had people where it was go, go, go. We got the written assignment and we stopped. We said, you know what? Not a good fit. Now we've had some that we got it and we said, holy cow, this is a complete disconnect to what we got in all the interviews. Please go back and do this again. And they wrote it up again and we said, we were right, not a fit. And we stopped the interview at that point. So one thing is we're really purposeful about doing it. So we understand what motivates people, but then we had to understand what motivates our CMOs, the people we're talking to. What they really love to do is do great work. They've been the vice president of marketing at ATT. They've managed the department. They managed the budgets. And they found they were sitting in a meeting about a plan, and managing a department and managing budget, and they weren't get to do marketing anymore. So we allow them to we help them do what they love to do, work as part of a management team of a mid-sized company. A company that couldn't afford to hire them full-time, they work 1 to 2 days a week on the company, part of the management team implementing, but then they get to be on 2 or 3 companies at once. So they love doing great work and they love learning. They love learning from each other. They're so smart, they realize they don't know everything. So we had to take those 2 things and build that in. So the way we hire for it, the way we try and incorporate it is, first, we have to live it. We have to live every day the fact that we are helping them do what they absolutely love. We have a set of core values. They're a little funky, but so are we. Everyone looks at those, does that write up, but the values, it's easy for someone to look at something and read and go, yeah, I agree with that. Yep. I mean, we've all seen the case study. You read the values for Enron and you would say, oh yeah, absolutely. Well, the stated values are one thing. The actions of the organization are different. The culture of the organization. That's what really matters. How people take those values and translate them into the way they treat each other, the way they treat their customers, the way they treat vendors, the way they expect to be treated, the way they can expect how management's going to make decisions. It's bringing it to life. So the first way that we screen for it and interview for it is each person interviewing, and we'll have them interview with someone who's newer to the company and someone who's been doing it a while. So they'll interview with 6 people. Every one of those people really has to believe in the value of the culture and naturally bring it up. If it was something stuck on the wall where it wasn't an important part of the company, it would never get brought up in the interview process. So it's one of the reasons that they love being in the company. So it naturally comes up. Well, it naturally comes up because we spend time and effort on it. We have a concept we call the culture piggy bank. That's what we kind of talk about in the management team. The culture is a piggy bank that you constantly make little deposits in. Hey, that's a good thing. That strengthens the culture. A little deposit. You need to build up this piggy bank because there's going to come a day when you need a withdrawal from it. When you need to say, oh my gosh, folks, we really need you to help us out on this one, even though it might not be the best thing for your pocketbook. It's little things like, for us, it's celebrating success. For us, every time we get a win on a new project, we send an email out to the whole company saying, hey, everyone, congratulate these people because here's the project. And naturally, it happened that the culture says everyone responds. And they usually comment everyone. And one guy, Matt Benner, always responds with a pun. And someone else always responds some other way. And people are trying to be funnier and catchier and kitschier on how they respond and say congratulations. We've got a company that's scattered across the country. So every week I do 2 one-on-one Skypes. Just, hey, let's talk face-to-face and what's working in the culture. What do we need to be sure that we never forget as we grow? And then what's not working? How can we help you? In the interview process, we've got a set of questions. We assign people you're going to interview on there's technical things, there's business development things, there's cultural things. Everyone has to comment on the cultural fit. But then they're assigned, you need to probe in this area and this area on the other elements. So everyone, and they have to put in their written responses into our system so we can we can read them. You know, this, yeah, he was nice, doesn't cut it. We really need everyone probing on the culture. And quite frankly, you know, if people are saying, I don't think they're a fit for the culture, you know, they're out. We have also hired and fired based on culture. And that's actually a little harder thing. But I'll tell you, every time that I've agonized over firing someone, calling someone up and saying, I'm sorry, but it's not working. I mean, early on in the company, there's only about 7 of us. And one of the guys we brought in was the chief marketing, one of the ex-chief marketing officers for Coca-Cola. I mean, talk about a marquee resume to have on your marketing consulting company when there's only 7 of you and you only got 3 clients. This guy who was head of marketing strategy for Coca-Cola, head of all of Coca-Cola for Africa. And one day I had to call him up and say, I'm sorry, but it's not working out, you're fired. And he actually said, you're firing me? You've never even paid me. Remember, it's 100% commission. And you know, I was really torn about it. And as soon as I told the company, I'm sorry, I know, but I just, it wasn't working. I had to tell them. Everyone said, well, finally, you know, finally, really, if it was so obvious to all of you, why didn't you tell me? You know, every time he came on the phone, he sucked the air out of the room. He always had to be right. He always had to be the smartest person in the room. And they said, you know, why didn't he get on assignments? It's like, well, all the projects we had, I was afraid if I put him in front of that CEO, he'd piss them off. He'd tell them what an idiot they were. They weren't running the company right. But every time I fired someone because they weren't fit for the culture, the organization said, thank you. I mean, how often have you fired someone and the organization says, thank you? If it's not a fit, they know it. If they see you act on it, that strengthens the culture. So that kind of is what we do. It's so much of it is living the culture each day, putting time and effort in, but then purposefully saying it's got to be part of the interviewing process. So when they speak to someone, they hear the culture come out. When they speak to someone, those people, you know, give us a written explanation. When I spoke to this person, I think they will fit into culture because of this. And then, you know, actually have them do that written assignment.
To build on one thing that Art's been saying about the interview process, we try to make sure that there's a good cross-section of people that they interview with as well. So people who have been around for a while, people who are relatively new, people who this has come to like it was the last, you know, they've been doing this for their entire career, and some people who have really struggled with the business model, just so they get a really clear view of who we are as a firm and how we work as a firm. The thing that sort of permeates all those conversations is the culture, but the perspective is different. The other thing that Art said that I think is important is that it really has to be right for both sides, and we've got to go through a lot of interviews with people where we get to a certain point where it's clear that the timing is not right for us to get together. Maybe a great person, maybe a good fit, but the circumstances don't dictate that this is the right thing at the right time, and that's really good that we all kind of recognize, and we have that kind of open communication even during the interview process. So you don't wait till you get to till somebody's on board to have open communication. It starts from the first day and first conversation.
One of the things that we do to try and keep it alive is keep a conversation on it, talk about culture. You know, we've got these rather funky, you know, core values, and a year ago in our national meeting, you know, we said, all right, let's break up into tables. We've got everyone tables. Each of them take a core value and say, what does that really mean to you? And we recorded that. This last year, we went a step further, and we're going to actually make it even more so based on conversations like this and books and stuff are reading. I started thinking about, you know, observable behaviors. It's one thing to believe something. It's another to act on it. And the culture is actually the way people act. So I said, let's take, and we were up in tables. So I said, all right, table 1, you get core value 1, table 2, you get core value 2. I want you to think about that core value and list out what are observable behaviors that are unacceptable in our culture. Unacceptable because of this core value, something you could see, not if they don't believe, because it's really hard to tell someone they should believe or see if they're believing, but you can observe a behavior. So what's a behavior that's unacceptable in our culture? What are behaviors that are expected in our culture? And then what are behaviors, observable behaviors that really build the culture? Well, it was great because we only had an hour for it at the meeting, but the room was just active, really engaged, really engaged. So what we're kicking off now, that was at our national meeting about a month ago. Now we're kicking off each month. We'll take one CMO from each of the regions. We've got them around the country. They're in 5 regions. So one from each. So they're working with people across the country and saying, all right, you 5, you've got core value 1. We want you to come up with and write down so we can actually use this to train other people. What are those observable behaviors that are unacceptable? You know, it's unacceptable to suffer in silence and not ask for help. It's unacceptable to flame someone. You know, what are the observable behaviors that are expected? You're expected to do this, you're expected. And then what are those great ones we'd love to see? And we'll have the organization come up with, and then each month present back to on our staff meeting, present for this core value, what did they write out? Then we'll assign another group of 5, the next core value. The idea is at the end of the year, we'll have this document that when we're doing our onboarding, we can say, all right, you know, you wrote about core values during the interview process. Well, here's the guidelines on now that you're here. Here's what's expected of how you behave and treat each other. Not something management declared, something the organization developed.
I think that to build on that too, the other thing we're trying to move towards is getting from observable behaviors to observed behaviors. So how do we catch people living the values or not living the values, and how do we put a spotlight on it so that people actually see in practice, in story, people living the values, and sort of so that we can often shared experience is as valuable as just having a core value on the wall. So how do we make it a part of the story of Chief Outsiders, and how do we get people to tell those stories?
Their recognition, celebrating success is reminding people, you know, this is what we're here for. This is why we like it. Okay, that was quite a bit of rambling for me on someone who's not an expert in the area. You know, it's just kind of, you know. Questions or comments? What's working for other folks?
Great. So just a reminder at this point, if you have questions or want to comment, just unmute yourself, or you can wave quickly, and then we'd love to hear from you.
I saw Laura wave.
Hi, Art, and this is awesome. Very passionate about this, and I am so interested to know how you create this culture and drive the culture remotely. I'm amazed at just the success you've had with everyone, and I know what it's like to work with people all over the country. It's more of a challenge. Do you have any tips or things that have worked really well, or challenges that you've overcome?
Yeah, I'd say one of the tips is celebrate success. You know, one of the things we have to fight against is we don't want a bunch of single shingles that are just out there on their own, doing their own thing. We are a company. We are building what we hope will be, you know, a $100 million company. We're a long way from that, but you know, we're building a national company, not just a bunch of loose people. So part of it was give them some feeling of ownership. One is most of them are partners in the firm. After a year, they can be granted partnership and granted what's today a very, very small amount of equity, but they're granted the title of partner. Their compensation goes up. As a partner, we share the full P&L. They have more input into marketing things. So there's something where they're feeling ownership. The other is we really encourage sharing the successes of each other working together. They don't want to be alone. One of the type of people who often work real well for us is someone who's been a VP of marketing at 2 or 3 companies and has been a single shingle doing their own consulting for 2-3 years and realize it's lonely out there. Mm-hmm. I would love to have other people to talk to discuss with, to help me win a project, to learn from. So part of it is giving them opportunities to learn from each other and teach each other, giving them sharing success so they get to see what's happening. It's a million little deposits into the piggy bank, but it's always reaching out on how great they are, what they're doing, and really highlighting, look, on this deal, there are people from 3 different regions. The lead source was from the Midwest. The managing partner selling in the project was the Northeast because that's where the client was, and a CMO from the Southeast ends up working it. Isn't it great? We're all working together. You know, that was an announcement I sent out earlier today.
Well, I think to build on what Art's saying, you know, there's the celebration through email and making sure we celebrate successes and share successes. We also are programmatic. Every other week we get on a national conference call, so we're on the phone every week. We also do that at the regional level, get together face-to-face when it's possible, but by phone a couple of times a month. So we've got planned communication and times and set aside to be in communication with each other. Plus, we do a lot of Mark's doing the one-on-one follow-ups with everybody in the firm, and the managing partners are doing the same thing at the regional level. So it's being intentional about the fact that keeping everybody connected and collaborative is really, really critical to our success.
And as the managing partners are working with the CMOs, if there's a challenge, as this project, something's going on, we'll say, why don't we do a peer review on this? And send it out to the tribe. Sometimes it's open to the tribe. Hey, I need some help on this client. Anyone who's got experience in, SaaS software and animal health, I'd love you, to be on this. Sometimes they'll say, I'd really like to pick these 4 people because they've got the right experience. The idea is that none of us are as smart as all of us. Let them help you. And when you're allowed to help someone else, quite frankly, they love talking about business. They love commenting on strategy and what you're seeing and discussing and debating. When I'm allowed to help you, I'm more likely to reach out and ask you to help me.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's such a challenge, engaging people that work at home. So we talk about that on a regular basis.
Carl?
Yeah, I had a question. So now that you have the experience of 50 people and all that kind of stuff, what do you see as the link between culture fit and actual business results? Is there a strong correlation, or is it a little bit more hit and miss, or
There is a strong correlation, and part of it is because of the way we've defined our culture. And the first element on our core values is that the CEO should be the #1 marketing strategist for the company. Our job is to be their marketing #2. Now, what that weaves in there is we don't want people that are so smart, they have to be the smartest person in the room. We've got people whose marketing budget was way bigger than the whole revenue of the company they're consulting with. And yet their job is to be the #2 to the CEO, lead from the second spot, support that CEO, teach that CEO who may be an engineer who's never understood marketing, how they should lead the company from a market-based perspective. When they do that, that CEO is like, this is great. The times we've had people that slipped through the system and thought they were the smartest person in the room, the clients didn't like it. They didn't like being told, sit down, little mister, you're a little $40 million company. I'll tell you how to run that thing. That doesn't work. When someone suffers in silence and they're being challenged and they're not reaching out to the tribe, it doesn't really work. When they can go back to the client and say, you know what, I had a peer review, and look at the resumes of the people who are on this peer review, and here's what they're saying, here's what we're hearing. The clients are like, that's great. Well, those are elements of the culture of reach out, don't suffer in silence, use our own skills. So it's the people that bring the culture to life who often have the best. One of the hardest things to do, though, is take someone who's maybe generating revenue but is not right for the culture.
Right.
Earlier this year, I've been doing this 7 years. 6 months ago, I'd say there were 6 of us who had an email address of firstname@chiefoutsiders.com. The original 6. And 2 of them I had to say goodbye to this January. 2 of the original people is because they had kind of moved away from the culture. They weren't engaged in the tribe. They kind of said, you know what, well, you're just a biz dev source for us. And they weren't participating. And it was tough to take someone who's generating revenue, but people are going like, well, where's in this case, where's Ricky and Susan? Why aren't they at the meeting? How come, you guys allow this to go on? That's not consistent with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So, there were some questions on how is it that, we're these long-term people who still own quite a bit of equity in the company, were asked to leave. And it was, it was time.
And it sounds like you've got a bit of a discovery process where these things have become better and better articulated over time as you discover, you know, what exactly is it we're trying to capture here? Because I doubt you had this all from day one.
No, we didn't have much from day one.
Yeah.
I am surprised you know, I started the company, I had another partner, and I bought him out after the first year. The actual core values he articulated, I did the first one, he did the rest, and those have stuck. He's a really creative guy and really, really good. Now, how we apply those have changed, and then we've used the company to help say, you know, that little statement about building a company and a culture that attracts the world's greatest customers, their greatest marketers. That was developed by the company, by the people. And now we're going out to, you know, what are those observable behaviors? That's by the organization. It's my job to drive and protect the culture, but it's not my job to develop it or to create it. I've got to pull that out of the organization.
Excellent. Thank you.
Adam.
Hi, awesome. How do you try and ensure that that culture also gets manifested outside of your company meetings and interactions, but with your clients? Because at the end of the day, the two have to reinforce themselves.
Yeah. Well, you know, within our structure, we have 5 managing partners. Tom is one of our managing partners. He manages the Southeast. So he manages our business in the Southeast and those CMOs. When we start working with the client after 30 days, so during the discovery process, the managing partner will try to figure out who's the right CMO to go on that project based on what that company needs. It could be someone from that region or it could be someone across the country. But then after 30 days, we do 2 things. One is we send a net promoter score. That's a single question saying, you know, if you know someone who had a similar problem, how likely would you be to recommend? Scale of 1 to 10, and then comment. And then the managing partner calls them also and says, hey, want to be sure that, you know, the transition's going well. Do you want more written communication, more verbal? You know, what's happening? They do that at 30 days. They do it again at 90 days. They do it at 180 days. So we try and have a backdoor communication. Obviously, the managing partner will talk to the CMO, say, how's it going? What's happening? Then the CEO back. But we try and have that communication so that if we start seeing something where it's not going well, you know, in 7 years and 400 clients, not all of them have gone well. You know, it's something that we have to look out for and coach and guide and, you know, maybe make decisions about people.
And up front, when we're trying to figure out who the right CMO is, part of that is trying to assess culture and try to figure out who's the right CMO from a culture perspective to get to actually not only understand the business problem, but actually get the work done inside of that organization. So that's a critical part. But then also, to Art's point, following up and having a backdoor for the CEO and know that there's another way to communicate if things are not going the way that you expect them to go. And being in communication as a managing partner with our clients also helps.
Kyle? Oh, we actually can't hear you, Kyle. You're muted.
I see your lips moving, but I'm not that good.
Would you like to type in your question or comment?
Actually, I am a bit of a lip reader. Art, you're a fabulous leader. Go ahead, next. You got this figured out. Great. He did that without moving his lips, actually.
Art and Tom, while Kyle's submitting his question in the chat, you talked a little bit about your values at the beginning and the change in application of them. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, Tom, why don't you go ahead?
Well, I think the change in application is I mean, as Art was, I mean, we've been doing this for 7 years and we're learning more and more and more as we grow. And so we get smarter about what it means, what the values really mean inside the culture and what the behaviors are that exhibit the values or not. And so that's really the part that becomes clear. The values themselves really haven't changed over the last 7 years. What's really changed is our understanding of how the values manifest themselves in behavior and in action and in communication inside the tribe. And as we get smarter, we're better at making decisions about people, better at making moves on the people that don't fit, better at assessing. You know, the other thing that's happened as a result of, I think, the values and the culture emphasis is we're getting better about bringing on people that stay. So our attrition rate is relatively low. So that's another, I think, reflection of kind of learning our way into our values.
It's also continue to ask. You know, I said I do a one-on-one, try and do 2 a week with people in the company, which means I'll only get to them about twice a year if the calendars actually work. And I say, you know, what's working in the culture? What do we have to continue to do and never forget as we scale, and what's not working? Amazingly, the number one thing that 99% of people say is working in the culture, the first thing they say, you ready? That email you send out announcing the wins. I mean, imagine if the most powerful thing you could do would be to write up an email. Actually, nowadays I copy and paste and edit the ones the managing partners send in. But it's celebrating a success, saying, hey, everyone, please join me in congratulating, and you know, here's so-and-so partner in the West and so-and-so CMO in the East on a new engagement. Then we go through, here's how the lead came up, here's how we developed it, because they're all interested in that. Here's what the company's really doing, because they love to figure out what is it they're doing. And here's how we structured the deal, and then join me in congratulating. And then the tribe jumps in with these funny little congratulations and little puns and now and then little graphics. But something as simple as an email, and they're going, that's really good. And, you know, quite frankly, a couple of months ago, I was thinking, you know, all the stuff that I do, I've got to continue to take lower value stuff off my plate so I have room to do higher value stuff. And I said, you know, sending out that email, I don't really need to do that. I can just, do we need to do it? Do we have the managing partners do it? But everyone's saying, Art, this is the most important thing in the culture. It's like, okay, that needs to stay on my plate. So sometimes it's the little stuff, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't ask the organization what they cared about, what worked for them.
Yeah, the question from Kyle was, can you comment on other elements that support your culture, special events, practices, et cetera? And also, how transparent are you with your team regarding financial details? One of the things we do every call is we share our business results and sort of where we are. We also share on a monthly basis utilization, so everybody knows who's working and who's not. So, and Art was saying at the partner level, when people become partners, it's open kimono on the financials. So,
and quite frankly, that also is what I take home. And for the last 3 years, I've been the 4th, 5th, or 6th highest compensated person in the company. You know, quite frankly, if I had a choice of putting another $1,000 into my pocket or spending another $1,000 to grow the company, you know, let's grow the company. I've got some people knocking out of the park. Great. I mean, I'm not a pauper, you know, but, you know, and I hope to eventually get very rich doing this, but, you know, it does take a little to say, all right, by the way, you know, here's the graph. And basically there's a graph showing, you know, what people took home in the last year. That we do that only once a year. And then here's the name for me and here's the name of my CMO, where we are in the graph. I don't say who the other people were. But, you know, we're very open with the financials, the P&L, with the partners, with everyone. You know, every staff meeting, we're talking about where their revenue is, and we're showing revenue curves and billing and that other stuff. The question about other stuff we do, it was a 2-part in that question. What was the first part?
Special events, practices, other elements that support the culture, special events, practices, et cetera.
Yeah. The biggest special events are the national meeting, where we bring everyone into Houston for a week, and they have to pay their own transportation to get here. So they're paying their own travel to fly in. But we do pay for the hotel for the week, for the meeting event for the week, for the food and the booze. And let me tell you, if you have 50 chief marketing officers, do they drink a little? Do they drink a lot? They drink a lot. But we make sure there's a lot of value to it. You know, they're basically not billing that week. And since there's no base salary, they're investing a lot of time and effort and money to do this for a week. So it's got to be valued. They've got to learn. But there's also a lot of fun thrown in the evening activities with the final party at my house in my backyard with a food truck. So there's a lot of chance for them to get to know each other, to work together in small groups at that meeting, to learn from each other. We also have a knowledge sharing system. We use Bloomfire, bloomfire.com. It's a software where someone can post a question. Who knows an agency that's done this? And then when other people post the answer, that's tracked. And you can go back and search for, whatever the keyword is. We also have an onboarding section where when we bring new people on, okay, here's a series of videos and a series of materials to go through and learn and, pick up that stuff. So there's a lot of chatter in the system, whether it's just via email. We have a tribe at chiefoutsiders.com. If someone in the system sends them to that, everyone gets it. Where it's, quick questions, comments, this, or more formal in the Bloomfire, who's got experience in this, who's done this, who has an opinion about, X, Y, Z, and that stuff's tracked. Because again, one of the things that motivates them is learning from each other and working with each other, being respected for being an expert. And this allows them to demonstrate their expertise, share their expertise. It allows them to, to get that expertise.
And the Bloomfire system is set up so that people get emails when new questions are posted. So everybody's, you're not unaware. If you forget to go to Bloomfire, you're not unaware of what's going on. So it gets pushed to you. We also do regional get-togethers once a year, as Art said. And then I know all of us at the managing partner level are actively, I get my group, I'm in DC and I've got 3 other CMOs in DC, and we get together once a month for lunch. And when I was in Houston with Art, we used to get together once a month for breakfast. So trying to find opportunities to get groups together. It's a little difficult when you've got people working from home all over the country, but we do our best to try to interact with each other as much as possible.
Yeah, I've got one guy in Seattle, one guy in Portland. I got about 5 in San Francisco Bay, one in LA, one in Orange, one in San Diego. To keep them a tribe, you have to work at it. But also, whenever I'm traveling, whenever I'm out doing things, I'll be in Denver at the, at the event coming up. We've got one guy in Denver, I'll have dinner with him and his spouse and have a glass of wine, bottle of wine, and try and keep that face-to-face going on while I'm traveling.
A couple of questions. One from Ashton talking about checks and balances to ensure candidates are being authentic in their answers to the values alignment assignment. Great question. I think one of the things, by having so many people involved in the interview process, when things are inauthentic, it shows up because it didn't show, the person from the interviews, and if what they're saying in their values is inconsistent with their interviews, we'll know it. The other thing we can do is we can alert Art and Pete, who do the final 2 interviews, and say, hey, this doesn't sound right. You need to probe on this. I didn't get this from this guy when I was talking to him. So you may want to poke into that a little bit more. So we have some opportunities to sort of check ourselves.
We've also had mistakes. We didn't do it right. We had one case where, I said we bring everyone in for 3 days of onboarding. We bring them into Austin, Texas, where they go through 1 day of sales training with a sales coach we use, a couple of days of onboarding. We bring in a class of 3 or 4 people. And then I'm in Houston, it's a couple hours away, but I drive in for one of the afternoons, talk about strategy, vision, and we all have dinner together. And then I happen to stay at, my CMO lives in Austin. I stay at his house that night, and we had more wine. There's a lot of wine going on here. And one of the times I said, we're sitting around his table with his wife and said, so what did you think of this guy? I only had an hour with him and then dinner. And then he said, I'm really concerned, and here's that. So we said, well, let's call the sales coach. So we called the sales coach and said, we're concerned with someone. This is someone we work with a lot. One of the 4 people you had today, there's someone we're concerned with. He said, it was this guy, right? And basically, he was flying home to Florida. And by the time he landed, we called up, we withdrew the offer, we refunded him his $5,000 and said, sorry, it didn't work. We've fired people because the culture wasn't right.
And that was one of my guys. Yeah, I got the call from Art and Pete on Friday when the guy was in the air.
Yeah. I'm really worried about this guy. You know, here's what we're seeing. Here's what the coach said. Now that we go back and we read the values, we hear the, you know.
Yep, and so we made a quick call when it was just clear.
It's better to pull the Band-Aid off fast. It really is. As much as I love having people in the company and we need people to grow and we're actively, aggressively trying to add people to the company, you know, it's better to pull it off fast.
Question from Glenn Art on how did it affect your team communicate when you got rid of the Coca-Cola guy, or anytime we let somebody go for cultural reasons? How does it affect the culture damaging individual? How did that affect your team communicate? How your team
I think I could probably.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. I was really chopping yours.
Yeah.
No worries. You mentioned that when you had let go of the former Coca-Cola executive, that your team had a finally moment.
Yeah.
That there was an understanding with them that there was an issue with this individual. How did letting that person go affect how your team communicates around an individual that is a poor culture fit or somebody that's not getting in, so that it's not a finally moment?
You know, it reinforced something that we have to continue to reinforce, and we still have, but it's like, guys, if you saw this, why didn't you say something? You know, you're working with them more closely than I am. You know, why? Because I was afraid there was going to be mutiny, you know, because there was a great marquee name. And they were like, no, thank goodness. And unfortunately, we've had, you know, other times when it hasn't gotten to that point, but there was another one where we had to say, you know, goodbye to someone, and they even had an active client. And I had to say, you know, tell the client, you can go ahead and go with them, go with that person. You know, we're giving up the account, giving up that person. And, you know, I just sent an email out saying, you know, folks, you know, this is why, you know, this person's left. You have to be careful in what you say. But actually, you know, I got strong response back that it was a positive thing. There had been an interaction at the national meeting where he stood up and said something, and everyone in the room went, whoa, that's not acceptable. And then 2 or 3 other things, including, you know, the final straw was he sent a flaming email to the guy who is the lowest level person at the outsourced accounting company we use. You know, we outsource our accounting and bookkeeping. And this guy's flaming this guy and copying me on him getting flamed. And he was flaming him on something that wasn't his fault. And this guy's really good. And it's just like, hold it. You don't treat people like that. Even if this is the lowest level guy at an agency that we pay, you know, and then when, you know, you can only do so much in writing, but when a couple people called and said, so what was the story? I told them, I said, you know, look, you don't flame him. They're like, oh yeah, absolutely not. That's where it started to get in my mind. There's unacceptable behavior that the organization knows about. When they see it, it's just like, whoa.
But it's also creating a culture inside the company where it's transparent and it's safe to share. And it's safe to say what you really believe. I think it's sort of Simon Sinek when he talks about leaders eat last and creating a safe culture so that you're creating a safe environment where people feel comfortable saying what they really believe. And that's really, really important to building the culture as well.
And, you know, if they're partners in the firm, they own some equity. Now, granted, the people coming in now own very, very, very small amount of equity, but they feel they're a partner in the firm. There is this, look, we only want people coming in who are going to improve your reputation. You know, if someone meets one person, they think everyone in the company's like that. They're going to think you're like that person. Is this person someone you're happy to represent you? If they're not, you know, we kind of push that with interviewing and have to do it, you know, time and time again, especially if you've got someone who's just been with the company a couple months and you're having them do one of the interviews. You know, your job is to screen out, not be nice, because this person's going to represent you and all of us.
So we have a question. This could be for Art, Tom, or anybody else who's been a part of the community. It's from a newbie in the group. And Zig is exploring the Small Giants community, and he'd like to know what maybe attracted you to the community and what value do you see from the community. So I think it'd be helpful to hear from a few of you who've been involved with Small Giants for a while, if you're willing to share.
I'll start. I've been around for a long time. It's a great question. For me, it's the opportunity to share with like-minded people who are purpose-driven, and they're up to something that's bigger than just the making money in the companies that they're in. I think that's one thing that kind of the thread that runs through all of the Small Giants companies is everybody's up to something, and if the values or the qualities of a small giant ring true to you, you'll find people who really live that and actually get really excited about sharing and discussing how they're bringing it alive. So if that's something that would be valuable for you, then this would probably be a valuable place to invest some of your time.
Come on, someone else speak up. I've done a lot of talking today. My answer will involve, it has wine at the events.
I think Kyle maybe is trying to say something, but we can't hear you,
Kyle, you're muted.
That's all right. If you would like to share something, you can type it in.
Kyle offered to buy me wine at the next event. That was it.
Kyle's coming to the summit, Art. He's going to hold you to it.
Art, you're going to run up our open bar tab. I can feel it already.
You got it.
All right. So we do have just a couple more minutes. If anybody else wants to share the notes, I can share it with you afterwards, Zig. We really appreciate your time in joining us. We will follow up with an email directly after the fishbowl. And so there's just a couple questions. We'd love for you to fill out the survey, and we want to hear your feedback. And then we'll also include all the resources that we mentioned today in the fishbowl. Also, next month's fishbowl is going to be hosted by Lara Morrow, who is there in the corner. She's waving at everyone. It will be on June 29th at 3 p.m. And the topic will be on how to do recognition for a very minimal cost or for free. So she'll talk about all sorts of programming that she's implemented at Stericycle, which is a 25,000 giant company. So on that note, we hope to see you next month. We really appreciate you joining us. And then we will follow up with an email directly after. Have a great day. And thank you, Tom and Art, for the conversation today.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. This is great.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
It's
everyone.
wonderful.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Okay, well that's it for this one. Check out more fishbowls exclusively for the Small Giants community at smallgiants.org.